Hello, good morning and welcome to our webinar. My name is Christina Hippisley and I'm the General Manager of the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. Now we're expecting around 180 people today, which is an excellent number. It just shows how many people are really interested in moving to Portugal. And just to let you know where I am, I'm in central London here, where the weather is fairly changeable, hence the light may go in and out. Forgive me, but there's not much I can do about that. But in Lisbon, of course, the weather is beautiful and sunny and beautiful clear blue skies, as always. Now, a little bit about me. I'm the General Manager of the Portuguese Chamber, and I've been in the post since 2009. And before that, I spent 10 years living and working in Portugal in advertising and media related businesses. And I worked in Lisbon, Porto, and all over Portugal during those years, and obviously learnt Portuguese as well. I came back to the UK some years ago, but Portugal was very hard to stay away from. So I started working for the Chamber here in the UK, and I also bought a house in Portugal since I was going there so often for business. Now, we here at the Chamber, we started our Moving to Portugal events about 3 years ago in order to spread the word about Portugal, all the benefits it had, but also it had started offering this very attractive non-habitual residence tax regime. And so we started the Moving to Portugal events to talk about that and all the other advantages of living and working in Portugal. The aim of the events is to spread the word and also to introduce all of you visitors, everybody who's been kind enough to log in today, to our Chamber members in Portugal, and hope that they can help you fulfill your dream of moving to Portugal and your relocation plans. So since the Brexit vote in 2016, interest in Portugal here in the UK has just grown and grown, and over 6,000 people have now attended our Moving to Portugal events in the UK and in Ireland, actually. Normally, these events are live. We have big seminars, exhibition space, people come along and they meet our members, listen to the seminars and talk about everything they want to learn about. But while we wait for live events to resume, we've moved everything online to a series of webinars, and we're very, very active on social media. Have a look at our website, movingtoportugal.org.uk, and also at our Facebook page, facebook.com/pcc/moving to Portugal. And hopefully we're live streaming on Facebook round about now, Geoffrey. I'm not sure, but I know that our technical guys in the background are sorting that out for us right now. Anyway, that's enough about me, and that's enough about moving to Portugal. Back to business. The title of the webinar today is Applying for the Non-Habitual Residency Programme in Portugal's Clean and Safe Environment. Now, what does that mean, I wonder? Well, does the Portuguese lifestyle appeal to you? I bet it does. But have you been wondering about your move to Portugal and what taxes you need to plan for? Well, let me tell you more. The webinar will last approximately 30 minutes. I'm going to introduce our guest, Geoffrey Graham from Edge International Lawyers in Portugal. They're chamber members and they specialise in Portugal's non-habitual residency tax regime. This regime can be highly tax efficient for those planning to relocate to Portugal's clean and safe environment. Geoffrey and I will talk a little bit about the current situation in Portugal, and then we'll hear some more detail from Geoffrey about the NHR and a couple of case studies, and we'll answer some questions from you as well, of course. So if you've got any questions, just put them in the Q&A function here in Zoom, and we will endeavour to answer them. We're recording the session. We'll be putting it on our webinar library, and so make sure you check our website, movingtoportugal.org.uk, and we'll put the presentation, Geoffrey's presentation, up there with full contact details, and we'll send it all to you in an email after the webinar. I can see we're already up to 102 participants, which is wonderful. No doubt we'll have more people joining us during the session. So no pressure then, Geoffrey. We've only got dozens and dozens of people watching us who are very keen on moving to Portugal. So hello, Geoffrey. My guest today is Geoffrey Graham, the Senior Partner at Edge International. Hello, Geoffrey, welcome.
Hi, Christina. Good morning.
And Geoffrey, he won't blow his own trumpet, so I'm going to do it for him. Geoffrey's a solicitor. He's registered within the Portuguese Ordem dos Advogados, which is not easy, I can tell you that. He's also registered with the Law Society of England and Wales and the Law Society of Ireland. So that makes Geoffrey quite an unusual animal by anybody's stretch of the imagination. He's also one of the founding partners of Edge International Lawyers in Lisbon, and that's a full-service international law firm. He's also got excellent connections with the British and Irish embassies in Portugal, and he sits on the council of our chamber here in the UK, and also of the Ireland-Portugal Business Network in Portugal. Geoffrey, just before we talk a little bit more about Portugal, tell us a little bit about Edge. What does Edge do? Tell us about the company.
Okay, Christina, thank you very much for that introduction. And it's a pleasure to be sharing the platform again. And I'm moving to Portugal, this time virtual event.
Yes. Normally you're on stage with me, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Certainly I can testify to the success of those events and the success of the Chamber in both launching and continuing to hold those events. So I'm very glad to see that we're on that platform again, albeit a virtual one, but we adapt, don't we?
We adapt, yes.
So yes, just a little bit about Edge International Lawyers. As you said, we are a full service law firm. We have now a global client base, literally clients all over the world. We're focused really on tax, as well as one of our specialities. Non Habitual Residency being obviously one of those subsection focuses within the tax department. But that's not all we do. I suppose the way I look at it is a little bit like telling a story in the sense that our clients, really, we like them to become legacy clients in the sense that they may start wanting to register as non-habitual residents in Portugal, but then they may well want to start businesses and enter into JVs and run companies or startups. So that's also something which we support. Now, it's not just European clients we look after, we also look at non-European clients, and that can be from a perspective of resolving their or introducing them to and solution focused finding their golden visa or any other immigration solutions, but also again supporting those clients in their investments and how they invest in Portugal. So as a result, we have departments such as litigation, which support those clients together with private client.
My goodness, exactly. So it sounds like you meet people early in their journey when they're relocating their business or lives to Portugal, and then you get more and more involved in their journeys. And I know, Geoffrey, talking to you beforehand and also talking to you over the last few weeks and months as we've navigated this very difficult situation. I mean, the global pandemic picture is incredibly challenging right now. What do you feel that Portugal's done well during the pandemic? There have been some localized flare-ups in Portugal alongside many other countries in Europe, and Portugal's handled everything incredibly well, although it's sadly not on the air bridge with the UK at the moment. What do you think Portugal could have done better, if anything?
Well, before I answer that, Christina, I see that Adrian has his hand up and obviously wanting to ask a question. So what I'd say to Adrian is, could you post your question on the Q&A and we'll see whether we can answer that at the Q&A session. So yeah, turning back to the question, what Portugal's done well, specifically, I think lockdown, an early lockdown was fundamental to controlling the spread of the virus. I think that Portugal was very concerned that the National Health Service would be overwhelmed. The National Health Service functions very well in this country, but like every National Health Service globally, that's one of the primary concerns, and therefore lockdown was actually a very effective way of controlling and containing the virus. Portuguese were very compliant, I have to say, in terms of the regulations and new regulations which were introduced quite dramatically and almost from one day to the next. And also there was a consensual political approach to the problem, in the sense that I suppose the politics were maybe set aside and it became a public health issue. And I think that was fundamental in addressing the problem. In terms of the challenges, I suppose, recently, I mean, for example, yesterday, for the first time since the 16th of March, there were no fatalities. And now every fatality obviously is a tragedy. But it's just really to contextualize how Portugal is doing right now. And then also for this has happened on a number of days, that the number of actually recovered has exceeded the number of cases. I believe 106 cases yesterday. So that's actually the lowest number for quite a while. So yeah, I think it's really handled things quite well, including the local outbreaks.
Well, I would agree with that, but it is a very personal question for everyone involved. Just before we move on to more detail about the non-habitual tax regime, Geoffrey, one other question I'd like to know your answer to. You've lived and worked in Portugal for over 20 years, and I did live and work there for several dozen years as well. Although we're going through such a difficult time now, what do you think has changed most radically in Portugal in the last 5 years? I mean, Portugal is very much a lifestyle hub now. Can you explain that? Why it's becoming so popular? Why there are 200 people watching us on this webinar? What do you think the answer is?
Well, Christina, I almost feel that you're as well, if not better qualified to answer that than me, but I will reply. I feel that in the past 5 years, there's been a significant change as a result of international investment in this country. I think all of the raw materials were always there as far as Portugal is concerned. You and I know that. But I think that fundamentally, with an increased internationalization, particularly of the cities, I think it really started in Lisbon and then moved up to Porto, but also the Algarve, and there's still regionally areas of Portugal which are relatively undiscovered. So I think the fact that there was a connectivity as well to Portugal, whereby 20 years ago I felt maybe perhaps a little isolated. Now we have the flag carriers, now we have any of the major carriers and low-cost carriers coming to and from Lisbon and Porto and the Algarve, and actually having some of their hubs here. So I think that has been fundamental to the change. And let's not forget about the non-habitual residency programs, the golden visa programs, and also the urban rehabilitation program, which I think has really changed the look feel of the city.
Well, I'm very conscious, Geoffrey, that we've got 110 participants who I'm sure want to hear some of the specific details of the non-habitual tax regime and to answer some questions. So I think what we'll do now is move on to asking you to explain in more detail applying for the non-habitual residency program in Portugal. And I know, Geoffrey, you've done a little bit of detailed work for us and you've put together a very brief presentation. Again, any questions, put them in the Q&A box. And Geoffrey, perhaps you'd just talk us through the presentation that you've put together for us with some detail for us.
Yeah, it's just popping up now on the screen. Yes, it is applying for non-habitual residency in Portugal's clean and safe environment. You'll see the Clean and Safe logo there. I'll come on to that a little bit and explain that a little bit during the presentation. Just to say that the presentation is not slide heavy, as you said, Christina.
No.
It's really much more preferable to actually answer some of the burning questions, which I hope a number of you have. So I think about EDGE, I think EDGE, we've already done the introduction. So I don't think there's any need to do anything further other than to say those are the departments or the specific departments that we have. You can see through that we do have, we are full service. And I suppose we do provide tailored solutions both for British and British resident clients, not exclusively, of course. As I said, our client is global, our client base is global. But interestingly, we're seeing an increasing number of inquiries from British nationals who are actually living overseas, and they want to have a soft landing from whether it be Hong Kong or Dubai, as the case may be, back into Europe.
Funnily enough, we've had several inquiries from people living in Malta who are looking very hard at British people living in Malta looking very hard at moving to Portugal. So anybody in Malta, don't worry, we're on your case. We'll do something, don't worry.
That's actually, yeah. I mean, now you mention it, we've had a couple as well. So
yeah, it's a big area.
Yeah, so I think actually, Christina, ultimately what it might be about is, because we've also had a number of inquiries from Singapore, is that all of the benefits that maybe those small islands and small states have in a lockdown situation, a lot of those, they maybe evaporate in the sense that, when we look at somewhere like Singapore, which is a great place, I've visited many times, very dynamic, but as soon as you're locked down in Singapore, it's not such the same springboard that it is to the rest of Asia. Just Singapore as an example. So I think, yes, I think people are conscious and looking at their lifestyle and looking at Portugal as a lifestyle hub. And I think that ultimately, as we've said over the past sort of 5 years in particular, that has been something which Portugal has been very good at developing and showing to the rest of the world, I suppose.
Exactly. Okay.
So I suppose the maybe a little bit more of a focus on why Portugal is trending right now. And reason, very summary sort of basis, is the fact that there are a wide number of destinations with a really diverse nature, whether they be Bay Beach and golf, historical, wine destinations, even music festivals destinations, surf destinations, nature destinations, and maybe where Portugal started a little bit in this transformation in the city breaks, despite the fact that it's last on that list. I think that both Portugal and Lisbon have won multiple awards as destinations to have a weekend. Very much, bite-sized in the sense that, find enough interesting to get to know the place within a weekend, but enough there to want to come back. So Forbes has put Portugal as at the top of the list of countries to live and retire overseas after COVID-19. Portugal is in the top 3 of the safest countries in the world for 2020, and that again is something which is very appealing for our clients who are looking for a very safe country. And then the 7th most democratic country in the world. And, maybe this was, if you like, manifested in the way there were the consensual politics operated in Portugal on the lockdown, despite the fact that we have a prime minister and a president from 2 opposing parties. They were very much singing from the same hymn sheet as to what needed to be done in order to control the spread of the virus. So then maybe turning a little bit to the post-COVID world, hashtag, and looking at the subtitle of the actual presentation itself, and both the Clean and Safe campaign and the Portuguese Health Passport. Now, the Portuguese Health Passport provides a package of healthcare services for tourists, and it's been developed by the Portuguese Tourist Board for a fixed price, easy access, is available to high quality care at all of the participating private hospitals in Portugal. And I have to say that one of the other big developments, if you like, in Portugal and changes has been the number of new private hospitals which have been built and which are fully functioning and giving an extremely good service. So I can testify that to myself.
Yes, you're living proof.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
you and your family, exactly. Yeah. So, well, there's many good reasons why there are nearly 200 people on this seminar right now. So yes, okay, fantastic, Geoffrey. Carry on.
So
Sorry.
No problem. No, the Clean and Safe campaign is, I think that's something which has been pretty smart, which has been created by the Portuguese Tourist Board again, very much focused on the fact that tourism is a main driver for the Portuguese, or one of the main drivers for the Portuguese economy. It's not just tourism itself, but it's the feel-good and ancillary industries which it also supports.
Well, one of the reasons you have such a flow of people coming to see you, Geoffrey, is because 2.5 million British people alone go to Portugal every year. So that creates an enormous pool of British people who've fallen under the Portuguese spell and then are deciding to relocate, as you say. And I appreciate that tourism is essential to that flow of movement moving into Portugal.
But it's also nice to see, Christina, that they can actually look at this Clean and Safe logo. They can select the hotels or rural hotels in which they're staying, and they can see if it has a Clean and Safe stamp attached to it, accreditation. So that also gives them a sense of comfort, if you like, about the place in which they're staying.
Yeah.
So now we've talked quite a lot about lifestyle in Portugal. Now just to turn to the non-habitual residency program itself may well be the principal reason why a lot of the 200 odd people have actually logged in. Now the program is over 10 years old. It was introduced in 2009 to attract individuals and their families by really making it very beneficial from a tax perspective to become a Portuguese tax resident. Now, as you'll see in the box on the right, it is a requirement to become a Portuguese tax resident. The second element is not having been a Portuguese tax resident in the previous 5 years. Now, that may seem to be an obvious matter to some, but we have encountered situations where clients have actually purchased property, for example, in Portugal maybe 10 years ago, and they have unsuspectingly been registered as a Portuguese tax resident. So that's something which we can also help with, and we can help to, if you like, clean their tax record and rectify it.
Okay.
So the status can be maintained for 10 years and result in pensions, dividends, interest and royalties and professional income originating from a non-Portuguese source being exempt from or subject to a preferential rate of tax. Preferential rate of tax in the case of pensions, be it there was a change to the legislation which was brought in at the beginning of April of this year, whereby pensions would be taxed at 10%, still a extremely favourable rate of tax. And one of the reasons we believe that this was introduced was maybe to deflect some of the criticism which was being levelled by European partners at the programme itself, probably because of its outstanding success. There are over 20,000 registered non-habitual residents in Portugal, and we would suspect a lot more after 2020.
I'm sure you're right, Geoffrey. Absolutely.
So then I suppose just digging down a little bit, successful applicants will be exempt from personal income tax on qualifying income being the operative phrase, if it could be subject to tax in the source country, even if it's not effectively taxed under an existing double taxation agreement. If there's no double taxation agreement, it will be exempt if it could be subject to tax in another jurisdiction and not considered as Portuguese source income. So it has to be considered to be foreign income for the purpose of the Portuguese domestic tax rules. Importantly, there is a special rate of tax of 20% for certain types of income arising from highly qualified activities. This is a finite list, which new list was introduced at the beginning of this year, and the whole system of becoming a high added value activity practitioner became a lot easier also at the beginning of this year. So Portugal is very much looking to facilitate applicants in their non-habitual residency program, and also attract really talent to Portugal, because that was really the main driver of the program in the first place.
Yes.
So I suppose then maybe looking on how to become a Portuguese tax resident, how easy it is, and I'll maybe deal with some of these of the detail of this in a later slide or in one of the questions. So the requirements of becoming a Portuguese tax resident: you need to spend 183 days in Portugal, or your Portuguese address must be your main address worldwide, or it must be your habitual residency or centre of life, as we would say. Sometimes this nomenclature, if you like, of non-habitual residency can be a little bit misleading. In order to be a non-habitual resident, I have to reiterate, it is necessary to become a Portuguese tax resident. It just means that you have a very special status, if you like, within the Portuguese tax system as a tax resident. Then satisfying the requirements is by declaration and delivering a proof of address, and that could be a rental contract or deed of purchase, and a residency permit, both for EU and non-EU nationals. And I'll come on to, in the next slide, I believe, to the whole issue of residency for British nationals, particularly in the context of Brexit.
Yes, there's lots of questions on that. Yeah.
So I can imagine. So so on the NHR in a post-pandemic world, certainly this is something which, as you said in your introduction, Christina, it's something which we've continued to be busy during the COVID, during the lockdown. Inquiries from regarding non-habitual residency, even if it means that things have moved a little slower, because it hasn't been necessarily easy to fix appointments with the local tax departments. But we have been able to submit requests online, and the e-function, the e-counter, as they call it in Portugal, has been working pretty well in terms of stage 1, which is becoming and obtaining the non-resident tax number.
Yes.
Anyone who has property in Portugal, open a bank account in Portugal, requires one of these numbers, and it's not it doesn't commit any individual to residency. It just means that their footprint begins in Portugal. Right. Now, maybe the focus of a lot of queries, Christina, is the right to reside. Yeah. And specifically the right to reside for British citizens post-Brexit. Portuguese authorities have been very open-minded, and they have facilitated very much British citizens, and they've guaranteed that if a British citizen establishes their residency right prior to the end of the transition period. Now, we're not even going to get into a discussion, Christina, about whether that transition period will be extended.
I doubt it. The feeling here in the UK is it's done and dusted, and everyone's just holding their breath for the early part of 2021.
I absolutely agree. So I think it has to be on the basis that there'll be no extension, or certainly look at that as the worst case scenario. And as long as you've established your residency rights, then after the end of this year, the residency certificate, which all EU citizens, including British citizens, still get until the end of the year, will be exchanged for a 5-year third country national visa, which will allow free travel within the Schengen area. So it doesn't require renewal. And from what we've seen with our contacts and discussions with immigration authorities, it will very much facilitate the exchange of these EU residency certificates. So tax residency, yes, we are able to continue to register clients as tax residents and non-habitual residency clients as tax residents, which is an essential stage before making the NHR application. So if with the power of attorney, we can do this at one of the local tax departments through appointment, and then there is an electronic registration mechanism. So the NHR application itself, it's an electronic application once again, and we do this electronically through the platform, which is provided by the tax department, and each individual NHR will have their own area within that portal. And there you go. Hey presto, stage 5, NHR status granted.
Even in a post-pandemic world, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
amazing.
So I think what's been interesting about it is the fact that stages 1 to 5 just take that little bit longer in this post-pandemic world. But the Portuguese authorities are adapting, and we, as I say, we're still seeing a high level of inquiries
Well, I agree, Geoffrey. If we're anything to go by, we're getting phone calls every day. So, and there's great demand for our next live events and just questions in general, because the pressure is building. We're so close to the end of the year, and there's no easy way to get the answers because travel has stopped. So companies like yourself, who are offering a very clear pathway, are, I think, helping people a great deal. Sorry, these are your contact details.
They are, Christina, yes. So just, you can contact me. Any questions that you have, which you're unable to raise during the course of this session, you can direct either to me or to my department address, which is ggraham@edge-il.com, international@edge-il.com. We also have a couple of sites, our general site you can see below, and also a non-habitual residency site, which is very specifically driven to answering non-habitual residency questions. You'll see lots of news and updates there as well. And I was hoping, but technology defeated me today, I was hoping to be able to share this presentation through our site. But it will be available on our site after the presentation.
A small setback.
Yeah, a small setback. So worldwide, we have basically our Lisbon office, which, as you said, Christina, is our HQ. Yeah. We also have an office in Porto in the Algarve, and an office in London, and our, if you like, launching pad into Africa in Cape Verde. So that's where we are, and really that's the end of the presentation. I appreciate. I hope it was interesting for everyone and for you, Christina.
Well, I'm delighted to say we've hardly lost any viewers, so that means obviously we were saying something interesting. So Geoffrey, thank you so much for that. That was useful, very specific information for our viewers. We've had quite a lot of questions come up on the Q&A, so don't worry, guys. We will get to all of you. The webinar is officially supposed to last for 30 minutes. We're running at 35 minutes. We're going to take a few questions now and ask Geoffrey some specifics, but don't worry, any questions that you've asked, if we haven't had time to deal with them, because I think we'll probably take 5 or 10 minutes for questions and then finish, because I'm conscious of everybody's time, and we still have 120 participants watching, and I'm grateful because time is money. So if you're here with us now, that's great, and we appreciate it. I'm going to ask you some specific questions, Geoffrey, and then we'll try and take a few more from the audience, so to speak. So, Geoffrey, the first question is from Jan Yao. He's got an Irish passport, but he's been residing in the UK for the last 23 years. He wants to retire to Portugal next year. Can he benefit from the NHR programme?
Absolutely. There's no nationality restriction regarding the non-habitual residency. The only issue, difference, if you like, with European citizens as opposed to non-European citizens is European citizens can obtain the residency significantly more easily through obtaining the EU residency certificate, whereas non-EU citizens require to actually have a residency permit and go through a residency process. Therefore, there's also no minimum investment required, meaning that it's not a requirement to either have X in the bank or have actually purchased a property for Y. So very much the program is open to everyone, and it's driven, even Portuguese, I have to say. Portuguese who've
People
been...
are always surprised about that. The Portuguese can apply for it if they haven't been living in Portugal for 5 years.
Absolutely. Therefore, it's just based on the series of double taxation agreements that Portugal have, which are some of the most extensive globally. And therefore, we have really a genuinely multinational clients applying successfully for the program.
Okay. Next question for you. Simon O'Neill. He's a UK national aged 44, and he wants to become a permanent resident in Portugal. Very sensible move, Simon. What proof of documents are required, and what are the minimum financial requirements for him to qualify under the NHR programme?
So as I said, there's no minimum financial requirements as such, other in terms of the proof of the documentation. It's simply to show a lease contract or indeed a deed of purchase and sale of a property which Simon has purchased. And I suppose maybe just extending that thought a little in terms of the minimum investment. What we like to see in terms of the lease agreements, we like to see a lease agreement of not less than 12 months, which basically means that you can break after 8. That shows a significant level of permanency. Although I have to say there are no hard and fast rules which have been set out by the Portuguese tax authorities. We just feel it's sensible to actually show that you have the intention to live here and to move here and have actually moved here.
Well, yes. And also you've got to prove to the British that you've left as well. So that's another whole issue. Right. Third question for you. This is from Cara Beck. Cara, hello. Thank you for sending in your question. Cara is a British citizen residing in the Netherlands. She works for a British company, but she receives her salary through a Dutch payroll company. She pays into social services and pension in Holland. Right. First question Cara has is, can I maintain the current status of being paid in Holland, but deregister, move to Portugal and become a tax resident there?
Yes. However, in order to benefit from the non-habitual residency program, what's necessary is that that salary would have to be continued to be taxed in the Netherlands, even if it were only at a very low level. So we have a number of clients who've done this. They've moved from the UK, from the Netherlands, from other countries in Europe and globally. And the requirement is that that salary needs to be taxed at source in some way, shape or form. In terms of the residency, again, you know, just to, I suppose, go back a little bit, as long as you establish your residency rights as a British citizen before the end of the year. And this is the element of the process, I have to say, which will require your physical presence, which I understand is more of a challenge now, given the restrictions on travel and certainly the quarantine periods after traveling. But it's something, again, which we've been able to facilitate for clients, and it's never been a stumbling block for any of our NHRs.
Okay, good. Cara also has a second question inside this, which is she's asking, will it be harder to establish residency in Portugal after Brexit? This is the $64,000 question.
Yeah, Cara, I have to say yes. Again, short answer. Basically, then it will require you to embark on a residency process, which could be the golden visa. Basically, the most straightforward being an investment in real estate for 500,000. Or it could be an investment visa, or indeed could be a work visa. So those are really the main visas that you could pursue. But yes, it will require a little bit more time. And I think, Christina, that because Britain and the UK has always been obviously part of Europe, I think that from a documentation-wise, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, because this is going to be an entirely new territory. In terms of obtaining this documentation.
Well, because that's a really big issue, isn't it, Geoffrey? Because we get a lot of questions here. The fact is that the Portuguese government will have to clarify pretty quickly from January onwards, because they'll be able to negotiate directly with the UK, as opposed to as part of the 27, on the new arrangements for British residents that want to come and live in Portugal. Because at the moment it's the NHR, but will they adapt that? Will they tweak it? Will they expect the British to go in under another existing system? I mean, this is nobody quite knows yet, do they?
No, I suspect that they will, to a certain degree, have their hands tied. I do feel that they will certainly continue to facilitate applications by British citizens. And interestingly, on the golden visa side, we are already trying on behalf of some British clients to make golden visa applications, notwithstanding the fact that they continue to benefit from the residency rights during the transition period. So this is something, this may well be a door which is opened to British citizens moving forward.
Yes, and I second your feeling that the Portuguese will continue to prioritise British incoming investors and residents, because the latest statistics in Portugal for all the people that who are living in Portugal under the non-habitual tax regime, over 35,000 British are registered as living in Portugal officially, and many of those are under the non-habitual tax regime as well, and many thousands more British have houses in Portugal. They may not be officially resident there or have moved there yet, but there is the British are the single biggest foreign community living in Portugal right now, apart from the Brazilians and the other Portuguese-speaking foreigners, so to speak. So I have no doubt that the Portuguese government will continue to prioritise incoming British investors, buyers, workers. It's just a question of how they adjust the current rules Now we have a fourth question. We have a lot more. We'll take a couple more. We have a fourth question, Geoffrey, from Chris Randall. Chris, thank you. Chris is a British national, married to a Finnish national, currently living in the United States, considering moving to Portugal. Okay, this is a typical sort of international couple. So Chris is asking, what are the opportunities and options of migrating to Portugal? Which I think we've covered, actually. I think we've covered that earlier in the presentation. But more specifically, Chris is asking, what are the tax and legal considerations of working remotely while living in Portugal for a non-Portuguese company?
Okay, yes, that can be structured in a number of ways. One of the ways it could be structured is actually to receive consulting income, and on the basis that you work for a separate company, which you don't own, but that should be on the basis that work as a consulting income is exercised as a high added value activity. The second option would be actually to create your own company, or if you don't have one already, and actually push through the consulting income as income for that company and then receive the dividends from the company tax-free. So we have a number of clients who ask this very question, and what we tend to do is we initially do a fact find out a little bit more about you, and then we can tailor our answers, because I think that every client every client story is a little different. Yes,
that's for sure. Geoffrey, I'm conscious we've overrun by 15 minutes, but I think the quantity of questions we're getting is significant. I've got a couple that I can pull out from the live Q&A. Have you got any on your side that you'd like to answer?
I've got certainly Susan Huckster has her hand up, but I can't see any question. Okay. Here we go. We have actually, I do see one question from Adrian, who indeed had his hand up earlier, right at the beginning. Now, Adrian's question is, I wanted to move to the Algarve in 2020, but the virus is making it very difficult. If I am unable to move out in 2020 with Brexit transition ending on the December the 31st, 2020, what are my options? Well, I think one of your options would be trying to establish residency, Adrian, in Portugal prior to the end of the transition period, even if you didn't move hook, line and sinker. Because establishing a residency right does not automatically make you a Portuguese tax resident. Normally, we recommend that this is simultaneous, but it may well be that you intend to move still this year. You're only able to register your residency right now and then register as a tax resident next year. So that's something which we could look at. We can kind of see what any risks, any benefit, what obviously the benefits are obvious, any risks, and the best way to kind of find the solution for you.
So just to run that through, you could register in Portugal as a resident, even while living in the UK. This is actually a question for me. I've been asking myself this question. I don't know the answer. So Geoffrey, I'm living in the UK, but I really do want to move to Portugal, but the corona's in the way, and Brexit, two huge things. If I register as a Portuguese resident in Portugal while living in the UK, I can do that. There's a process whereby I can get Portuguese residency even while living in the UK.
There's a nuance here, and that is the difference between a residency right and tax residency.
Yes, exactly. So one is residency, the other is tax residency. Yes. Exactly.
They're not synonymous.
Yeah.
Basically, establishing a residency right means that you obtain your EU residency certificate. Yep. In order to obtain an EU residency certificate, you require either a property which you own or a property which you rent.
Right.
And then depending upon the local requirements within the city or town hall in which the property is located, that will drive what is necessary for you to obtain your residency certificate. And normally, we can only obtain that residency certificate with you physically here in Portugal, right, even if it's just for a few hours. So
you could physically be paying tax and resident for tax purposes in the UK, yep, but go to Portugal on a lightning visit, sort out your rental contract for 12 months, and get your go to town hall, register as a resident and get your EU residency certificate, which then, will that help you in early 2021?
Yes, it will, because the Portuguese government have said that all of those British citizens who establish a residency right prior to the end of the transition period will benefit under in obtaining the 5-year third country national visa. However, I do have one caveat, and that is we don't generally recommend that there's a long gap between obtaining the residency certificate and registering as a tax resident, simply because by implication, if not by operation, if you like, establishing a residency right means that you are a tax resident.
Yes.
So it is, if you're on a little bit of a tight timeline, and it is something to consider, but it's not a kind of one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay, it's interesting. Several questions that have come up during the seminar have been about how on earth to find a property to rent. Obviously, as a stopgap, it's a stopgap because they will eventually move permanently for tax and buy. But a lot of our visitors are conscious that they need to get that rental contract, and it's not. Well, again, there are specialist companies that do property rentals. I'm sure you've come across many of them, but there's a surge in demand for those now because everybody's thinking, well, let's rent somewhere for 12 months to keep our options open. Do you have another question, Geoffrey, you'd like to answer? Or
yeah, just on the rental, I agree with you, Christina, because ultimately, yes, there are a number of agents which specialise in providing rental solutions. But there is a limited amount of rental property available. However, most of our NHR clients start by renting, and then after 12 months or sometimes less, they buy. So, I think it's something, if it's seen as a sort of short-term solution, is probably the best way, particularly if you've never been to Portugal before. I know, shock horror, there are people who come to us who've never actually been to Portugal.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
So, but 99 out of 100 fall in love with it. So, so I don't think there's any issue about liking it or not. In terms of, there's a question from Helen about whether this information applies also to Irish residents. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Could you delay applying for NHR? If so, how long? Which is an anonymous question. In terms of delaying the application for the NHR, I think that at the moment there's no indication that the rules regarding the NHR are going to change, and therefore I think that ultimately our view and our perspective in advising clients is we need to advise you in your entrance to Portugal, so how your income is going to be taxed before becoming an NHR as an NHR. But equally important is your exit. So you need to be advised by your tax advisor in your home jurisdiction as to how you have a smooth exit from the UK, as the case may be, from Ireland, as the case may be, or elsewhere.
Absolutely. Actually, I've got an excellent question here, Geoffrey, if you could bear with me, because we haven't lost any participants, which I can only assume means everyone's actually interested in what we're talking about. So we'll just do a couple more questions. Geoffrey, I've got one here from Nigel Jenkins, who logged this question at 11:18. Nigel, if you're still listening, we're going to answer you. But the reason I'm going to put this question to Geoffrey is it's a great question, which will be relevant to the rest of our audience. So Nigel Jenkins is asking, Geoffrey, please, can you give an overview of NHR? Oh no, I lost the question. Hang on, where's he gone? Sorry guys, I lost you. Basically, Nigel was asking, he's already got a property in Portugal, which he bought in 2015, okay? He's obviously not a tax resident, he's living here in the UK at the moment, but he's got a property which he bought in 2015. What benefit will that give Nigel in 2021? Will it benefit him for applying NHR or Golden Visa, or what will be the benefit, if any, of already being a property owner, which is hugely relevant to thousands of Brits who already own property in Portugal but are not tax resident?
Yes, I mean, certainly on the non-habitual residency side, it will be the door opener, if you like, for him actually establishing his residency in Portugal. So that's the address which he can use for the purpose of establishing Portuguese tax residency.
So he should think about doing that before the end of the year.
Yes, or alternatively, depending upon the property itself, Nigel should think about, because it is possible under the Golden Visa legislation to go backwards in certain circumstances on the investment. The critical thing is being able to prove that you actually made the investment personally, Nigel, so that you have, we can show that, for example, a bank statement showing a transfer of funds for the purchase of that property. That's fundamental to being able to prove the nature of the investment. So there are restrictions on certainly how far you can go back, and also on being able to prove from a documentary point of view that you personally have made the investment. But certainly it is worth exploring. And in fact, a number of our British clients who have already made property investments in Portugal, certainly I'll just give an example. Some of the purchases which we did or represented clients in, obviously real estate is one of the other areas where we support clients. This year, we ensured that from the documentation, it was clear that they personally had made the investment, the funds had come from their bank account. The immigration authorities in Portugal are particularly pernickety, if you like, about that, and being able to prove that. So, yeah, very much possible.
Okay, I have to say there's some fabulous questions here. Do you mind if I ask you one more, Geoffrey?
Not
or have
at
you got
all,
any
please.
that you want to answer?
No, you go ahead and ask, Christina. You go ahead and ask.
So, Geoffrey, we've got David Peaver, who asked us at 11:34 a.m. David is asking, if we have bought a property in Portugal but have not yet spent time there, how long do we need to be resident before the end of the transition period to qualify for the NHR?
You can be eligible immediately. That's the beauty of the Non Habitual Residency program within the first year when a split tax year operates. One of the things I should say is in the main presentation is that becoming a Portuguese tax resident is pretty painless in the sense that once you've established your residency right, we as a firm can, through powers of attorney, can take the rest of the process forward. And there was also a question actually I saw popped up there in relation to how long the whole process takes.
Yeah.
So once you have established your residency, then we can register you as a Portuguese tax resident with immediate effect. Meaning that if you got very excited and wanted to establish a residency before the end of this month, provided that you had your residency right already established, then that is very much possible to do. It is taking a little longer now. So whereas before, in terms of the whole process of establishing residency right on the basis that you can actually arrive in Portugal and do that, and also registering you as tax resident and registering as NHR, we used to be talking about kind of 5 to 6 working days. But
very quick.
Yeah, very quick. But I would say it's a bit longer now because of the fact that we're having to make the appointments at the tax department in order to change tax residency. So it may well be a couple of weeks, maybe a little longer.
Okay. I have to say we've already done an hour, Geoffrey. What do you think?
I've got Nicholas has got his hand up.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I can see, but I can't see a question. So Nicholas, if you do have a question, actually there was one interesting question from Anne Stenbon, which is, if you commit to 5 years, including tax benefits, what are your liabilities if you decide to leave before 5 years?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So first of all, the commitment is 10 years. And it's not really a commitment in the sense that and you're not locked in for 10 years. So what you can do is you can exit at any time during the 10-year period, provided that you're able to show that you are a tax resident somewhere else. Showing that you are a tax resident somewhere else means that you simply show a utility bill from, let's say, the UK, from France, from America, as the case may be. And then with that document, we can deregister you as a tax resident, as an NHR. But what we always recommend for our clients who've not actually used up the full 10-year period is that rather than deregister you entirely, we suspend your NHR, which basically means that during the course of the 10-year period, you can reactivate the NHR. The clock doesn't stop, but let's say, for example, you exited on year 5, you want to come back in year 7, you would still have until the end of that initial 10-year period, starting from the beginning of the 5-year period, in order to enjoy the benefits of NHR.
Okay, well, I have to say, Geoffrey, I think we've now hit midday. So we've been doing the webinar an hour. I can see that our participants are beginning to drop off slightly. Probably they've already overrun their allotted time. So I think, Geoffrey, this might be a good moment for us to draw things to a close. We have recorded, viewers, we've recorded all your questions. Don't worry. We haven't been able to answer all of them because we've had over 60 questions in the course of the hour, which is wonderful. That's almost a question. That's a question, one question for every 2 viewers or something. That's amazing. So we've taken note of all the questions. Don't worry. We will be sending them to Geoffrey. We've got your email addresses, obviously, because you've registered with us. So we will endeavour, if Geoffrey has time or his team have time, we will endeavour to answer your questions in the next few hours. It only remains for me, I think, sadly, we have to leave you. But I do think it's time to finish. And I would like to thank Geoffrey and his team back at Edge very much indeed. His team and his web guru have made this possible. And I'd like to thank my colleague Namrata very much for helping me set all this up. We will be sending an email out to all of you who've registered in the next few hours with Geoffrey's full details. But in the meantime, we hope to see you very, very soon. Our webinars are going to be coming thick and fast over the next few weeks. Well, we are having 2 weeks off for summer, but after that, we're going to resume. So keep an eye on movingtoportugal.org.uk for the dates of our next webinars. And we very much hope that we're going to be able to do a Moving to Portugal live event in the not too distant future. We're looking forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.